Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's true crime video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this that we're forced to deal with on the day today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the absolutely tragic murder of 17-year-old Riley Whitelaw. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. And now that I'm done begging you to join my cult, we can go ahead and get into this video. Now, this is a video on a pretty recent case. Riley Whitelaw was murdered in 2022, so just last year. And she was murdered while working her part-time job at Walgreens, which is so horrible to consider. This young teenage girl just trying to be independent, make some money when this happens to her. And then when you find out who was arrested for her murder and the history between the two, it gets all the more upsetting. Now, I've seen interviews with Riley's mother, and when I tell you to hear this woman talk would just break your heart, because it is so clear that she is so gutted at the loss of her daughter, at the loss of her only child. And one big thing that she has said is that she wants her daughter to be remembered. So I am going to tell you about what happened to her today. I'm going to tell you about her murder and who is allegedly responsible for doing this to her. But I'm also going to be focusing a lot on telling you every single thing that I could find about who she was so that she can be remembered by that, because everyone's going to be talking about her death and not a lot of people are going to be talking about who she was as a person. So even though I didn't meet her, I want to try to tell you everything about her so you can know that she was more than just her murder. She was a person who was very important and very valuable and deserves to be remembered. So today I'm going to tell you the entire story. I read all the things so that you do not have to. And at the end of this video, I'm going to ask you a question of the day. I'm going to give it to you now so you can have it kicking around in your brain while we go through all the details, but I want you to wait to answer until you can make an informed decision because you know the story. And the question of the day is this: what do you believe could have been done to save Riley Whitelaw? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below after we go through this case. Now, with all of that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the tragic murder of 17-year-old Riley Whitelaw. On June 11, 2022, just before 7 p.m., police responded to a 911 call that led them to a Walgreens located on Centennial Boulevard in Colorado Springs. When police arrived on the scene, one of the managers of Walgreens informed them that the reason they called is because one of their employees had gone missing, and upon searching for her, they had found her in the break room of the Walgreens. When first responders entered the break room, they found the body of a teenage girl there with significant trauma to her neck, and it was very clear that she was no longer alive. And this was a horrible scene. There was blood everywhere, on the walls, on the floor, even on the countertops. So as police enter and they get closer to the body, they find that on the ground near her feet, there's her Walgreens headset that she would have used to communicate with other employees. And next to that, there was an ID badge that had the name of the victim written on it: Riley Whitelaw. Now, who was Riley? Riley Whitelaw was born January 20th, 2005, and she was the only daughter to her mother, Courtney. When her mother named Riley, she knew it was the perfect name for her, as Riley meant courage, and her mother knew she'd live a life of such courage, and she was right. Riley was a very special person. She had a common theme throughout her life of compassion, empathy, and patience, and she always allowed others to be seen and to be heard. Even as a baby, when Riley was a baby, if she was put in a room with other smaller babies and one of these babies started to cry or, need comforting, she would crawl over to them and do just that. She was sweet and kind, and she had this innate ability to be able to look at somebody, recognize their needs, and help them in any way that she could. This quality in her was so obvious that it was noticed by other people, not even just in her family. When she was in kindergarten, there was a boy in her class who had a little bit of difficulty learning, and Riley noticed that and would always help him any way that she could. And if she and the boy were in class and the teacher was, teaching, and she noticed that he was having trouble, she would raise her hand and be like, teacher, he needs help. And it got to the point that she was so helpful with this boy that at a meeting, I think it was like a parent-teacher conference, the father of this boy came up to Courtney, Riley's mother, and was just like, "Listen, I just want you to know that I really appreciate your daughter." When Riley was killed, she had just finished her junior year at Air Academy High School, and while there, she not only got straight A's, literally in every subject, but was also a member of Color Guard and had even been asked to co-captain the team that year. I guess this was a huge accomplishment for her too, because when Riley first told her mom that she wanted to be in Color Guard, she was kind of like, well, good luck. I have no rhythm and you tend to take after me, so let's see how you can do. And at first Riley didn't do great, but it was something that just didn't come naturally for her. But she was super determined, the type to put her all into anything and everything. And she ended up practicing all the time, even before the season started. And in a short amount of time, she was crushing it because of the effort she put in to be good at something she wanted to do. Riley was just about to be going into her senior year with plans to study genetics in college after she graduated, which, first off, wow, big brains. But she was also very artsy. She loved to play guitar, she loved to draw, she loved to paint, and she was really, really good at it. Her, talent was noticed? Yes, and appreciated and awarded. She got many awards in school and locally. Now, if Riley's already sounding like a gem of a 17-year-old girl, you just wait, because she just gets better. She just gets better and better. It's so heartbreaking, man. Okay, so she had her part-time job at Walgreens, which, first off, the fact that she's even getting a job to help contribute and take care of herself is amazing. She'd been working there for a year and a half. On top of that, she started pet sitting for people, and she started volunteering at the Humane Society. She loved being outside and knew that all the dogs at the Humane Society could use all the love, attention, and exercise, so she would literally go and help them walk the dogs. And in honor of this, by the way, Riley's neighborhood was working on installing a bench in her neighborhood in her name so that other people could go and sit down and relax outside the way Riley loved to do. Riley's mother said that Riley was a kind, loving, empathetic human being and the type of person that we just needed more in the world. We need more Rileys in this world. On top of just being this wonderful person, she was also clearly wise beyond her years, because even from a young age, she was able to easily fit into a room of adults, carrying on conversations and drawing every person she encountered in with her smile. Even people she didn't know very well. For example, after Riley was killed, her mother received an outpouring of love from the community, receiving letters from friends, coworkers, even customers from Walgreens that knew Riley, who had just met her, you know what I mean? It's not like you get a real sense of a person. Well, I guess you do. You don't get a close relationship from people who work at the stores that you frequent, but they, even in their limited interactions with her, were touched by her. People her mother had never even met. I just can't imagine that. People you don't even know, adults you don't even know, coming and being like, your daughter touched me. There was this woman who was a painter, and she did this painting, and then she sold this painting at auction or whatever, however you sell paintings, and she took all the money that she made from this and she donated it to a benefit in Riley's honor, which we are going to get into. And then she went and had a print of the painting printed out and gave it to Riley's mother and was like, listen, your daughter just really touched me. And Riley's mom, Courtney, said that this just makes her so proud of her daughter, because how many 17-year-olds affect people that way? So she was all these things, but she was also still a kid in so many ways. She was 17 years old. She would hang out with her friends. She would make goofy videos. She would still come and sleep with her mom when she didn't feel good or just wanted that closeness. She still kept and slept with her stuffed animals. Her mom said that she has just a pile of stuffed animals of Riley's that she just keeps because that's what she has left of her, and that's her baby, you know? Her poor mom, dude. Just everything about it just breaks my heart. And to hear her talk, she was saying, and this just destroyed me, that she just wants her daughter to get justice. She says what she really wants is her daughter back, but she knows that she can't get her back, so she just wants her to get justice. And said that it's she feels like she's living in Groundhog Day, where she's just living the same trauma over and over again with no relief. Which just is so heartbreaking to me, because they just sounded so incredibly close. The December before she was killed, the two actually went out and got tattoos together. And it's because Riley had essentially worn her mother down. I guess for 2 years, Riley had been begging her mom to get a tattoo, and she was like, no, you are too young. You're not getting a tattoo right now. She even turned her down after Riley literally put on a PowerPoint presentation explaining to her mom the beauty of tattoos. But what really did it, what made her mom change her mind, is that Riley came to her with this design that she had hand-drawn that said, love yourself. I'll put a picture of it. It was very, very pretty. And this was her own design, and she's like, Mama, I want to get this with you. So finally her mom's like, fine. And they both went together and got their first tattoos together just a couple of months before she was killed. And her mom said that this, to her, is a gift from Riley that she'll have forever. So that's who we're talking about here. That's who Riley was. And now I want to take you to June 11th, 2022, the day she was murdered. It was on this day that Riley Whitelaw worked a shift at Walgreens. It was a late afternoon, early evening shift, and she worked at least part of that shift as a cashier. And this woman, Amanda, came forward later, who had been a customer that night, I guess one of like the last customers she had. And she said that Riley was in good spirits. She was super social, super friendly. She didn't like rush her out of the store or anything. And she just had a good interaction with her. And then said that when she thinks about the fact that she was one of the last people that probably saw her alive, it just gives her super eerie feelings. And then later she ended up coming by or seeing on TV that she had been killed, and she saw like her boyfriend's, Riley's boyfriend's reaction, and it was just like, it broke her heart. Now, after working a part of her shift, Riley left to take her break, and her break was only meant to be about 15 minutes. So some time went by, and the manager on site at the time, it was a manager named Crystal, realized at about 5:30 that Riley had never come back. So Crystal actually called another manager, and this was a manager named Justin, and was like, hey, Riley went on her break and she never came back. And he thought this was very, very strange because across the board, Riley was known as always being on time. That was something that was in her character. So for her not to come back definitely stood out to everybody. So even though he wasn't working, right, she called him like at home or on his cell phone, he came back to the store to help locate Riley. So at about 6 p.m., he got back to the store and he's like, okay, I'm going to check the surveillance footage to see where she may have gone, if she left the store, like what's going on. So he starts watching the surveillance footage, and this is when he sees something that definitely seemed off to him. He saw a man on the surveillance footage doing some weird stuff. He was taking these boxes and stacking them up to basically block out the surveillance camera so you couldn't see what was happening. Justin thought this was weird, and he also thought that this seemed intentional. And if he wasn't sure if it was intentional before, it was strengthened by the fact that somebody had taken paper and taped it over the employee break room window so you couldn't see in it, so you could not see in, and had put the restroom closed sign on the bathroom so nobody would go in. And these were things, the paper on the windows, I don't think anyone does ever, but the restroom closed sign was something that you didn't do until the store was closing, and it wasn't closing. So this was weird. It was after looking at the footage and seeing all this weird stuff that Justin decided to go look for Riley in the break room. Now, why, when someone doesn't come back from break and you're looking for them, you don't first check the break room? I have no idea. I couldn't find an answer for that, but now he was. So he goes. He opens the door to the break room, and that's when he sees the scene. The room's totally covered in blood, and he sees Riley lying there on the floor, and he looks at her, and he can tell immediately, like visually, that it's her. He panics. He doesn't even go in, and he calls the police. Within minutes, several police cars tear into the Walgreens parking lot and go inside. And once they enter the room and they're able to determine that, yes, this is Riley, and they really start to assess the scene, they can see that this poor girl went through hell. 17-year-old Riley had been stabbed at least 42 times. She had defensive wounds on her hands and arms and stab wounds to her chest, face, and neck, with the wounds to her neck being the most fatal. And she wasn't just stabbed. She also reportedly suffered injuries consistent with blunt force trauma. There was blood everywhere. A large pool was on the floor around her head, and there were stains on the floor, cabinets, and counters of the break room. Riley's shirt that she was wearing was described as blood-soaked, and her shoes were said to be blood-stained, and then between her feet lay her earpiece and her ID badge. Once her autopsy was performed, it was determined that her manner of death was homicide, which I feel like is fairly obvious, and it was also determined that the weapon that was used to cause her injuries was a single-edged blade, and that her cause of death was from multiple sharp force injuries, but they couldn't rule out that asphyxia was also a contributing factor in her death. This would be from a lack of oxygen or a state of being stifled and suppressed, which I don't know if that would have meant that this happened due to her injuries to her neck, or if there was more done to her. I'm not sure about that. So police get there, they're processing the scene, they're interviewing everyone that's there, the managers, employees, all that jazz, and they're there for hours, but they do learn some interesting information, obviously. First, they learn that the manager, Crystal, may have crossed paths with whoever did this to Riley. So basically what happened is, while Justin was in the room where the surveillance footage was, watching it, Crystal was still out looking for Riley, trying to find her. Again, not in the break room. I don't understand. So Crystal ended up going outside and was looking in the area where the dumpsters were enclosed. Like, you know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about. So there's like a square. Dumpsters are inside. It's closed off. Okay. So she goes there. And while she's there, she notices like a strong smell of bleach. So she goes and she tries to open the door to go in. And she hears a male voice say that he is changing. She doesn't recognize the voice, but she looks like down and she can see feet, but she doesn't know who it is. She did think this was weird though, and she ran inside. She told Justin like, hey, there's somebody out there, bleach, they're not letting me in, it's weird. So her and Justin go back, and by the time they get there, whoever was there was gone. But they look in the dumpster and they find an empty bottle of bleach. And it is believed that Riley's murderer was there trying to kind of like clean up the scene, clean up himself before he left and like get rid of evidence. So that's something, right? Somebody may be running into the killer. That's compelling. But then there was somebody who may have even been a witness to the murder. Not somebody who saw something, but somebody that heard something. I guess at the time that this happened, there was a customer in the store. I believe this was a teenage girl. Her name's out there. I'm not going to say it, but she was shopping, I believe, in the deodorant aisle. And she thought she heard the sound of a woman screaming and things slamming. So she's like, wait a minute, what is going on? But she thought to herself, like, there's no way I'm actually hearing what I think I'm hearing. So she bought what she came there to get and she left. And that sucks, but she had no way to know what was actually happening. You could never imagine that this is what's happening. But I guess later she was driving by or walking by and she saw the cop cars at Walgreens. So she went back in to tell them what she thought she heard, because now she's like, oh, there probably was something going on. Man, when I think about what this girl probably heard, because you'll find that the person who ends up being arrested for this was a man who was a lot bigger than Riley. He was like 5'6" and 270 pounds. And when you look at photos of Riley, you can tell she's just like this little thing. Speaking of the man who was arrested for this, it did not take police long to make an arrest in this case. It was just the following morning, June 12th, 2022, when a man was pulled over while he was walking down the interstate. Would it be pulled over? A man was stopped while walking down Interstate 25 in Trinidad, Colorado, which is about 100 miles away from the Walgreens where Riley was killed. The man was in a state. He was clearly disheveled looking. He was beat up. He had this weird haircut that the officer who pulled him over or stopped him said it looked like he had done to himself in a hurry. And the officer noted that he had bruises and scratches on his hands and on his hands, on his face and on his hands. So police stop him and they look at him and they're like, okay, who are you and what happened here? Like, what is all this? And he's like, okay, I was attacked at a Walgreens in Colorado Springs and I am 28-year-old Joshua Taylor Johnson. Now, why he told them exactly where he was attacked, right, and even down to the Walgreens, I don't know, because that was a dumb choice. I'm glad he's dumb, but, like, that was really dumb, because they didn't pull him over because he was a suspect or anything. They pulled him over because he was walking on the interstate, but now they're like, oh, we should probably look into this attack at Walgreens. So they do. They communicate with the other police departments, policing, and they find that, yes, there was an attack at a Walgreens in Colorado Springs, but not against Joshua. It was against Riley, and Joshua was actually a suspect in Riley's murder. Now, how did police have Joshua on their radar as a suspect so quickly? Well, it turns out 28-year-old Joshua Johnson was a co-worker of Riley's at Walgreens, and it was Joshua who Justin saw on the surveillance camera stacking boxes to block the camera right before Riley was killed. And on top of that, Joshua and Riley had a bit of a history. Not a history that she wanted, a history that 28-year-old Joshua forced on underage Riley. Turns out that Joshua had developed feelings for Riley, had a crush on her, and she was not receptive. 1, she had a boyfriend. 2, she was way younger, 11 years younger than him, and she was just not interested at all. It got to the point that Joshua started making advances on Riley at work, and it got so bad for her that she did the only thing she could do, and she went to management. She's like, listen, this guy's making me really uncomfortable. So management goes to Joshua and they're like, yo, you need to keep it professional. And he agreed that he would. So the management just assumed that this situation was solved. But then 4 months later, Riley's boyfriend actually got hired at Walgreens. So now Joshua is seeing the girl that he has feelings for, that he likes, and her boyfriend all the time. And he is very clearly jealous. Even the manager, Crystal, said that she noticed that he was acting jealous. So it didn't take long before Joshua started making Riley uncomfortable again. He started saying things to her that made her uncomfortable. And she goes to management again and is like, hey, I would like to switch shifts. I don't want to work with Joshua Johnson. He's making me so uncomfortable. And they agreed to schedule them separately. So with that said, why were Riley and Joshua working together that night? Well, Riley had decided that she wanted to work some more shifts because she wanted to make some more money. So she goes to management and she's like, hey, I'd like to get some more hours here. Is that possible? And they were like, well, we can give you some more hours, but the only way that that's going to work, that we can work it with the schedule, is if you work some shifts with Joshua. So she agreed to do that. She took this extra shift and she lost her life. Now, Joshua was arrested, as I said, and he was questioned by police. And when he was questioned, he actually admitted to a good amount of things. He said that, yes, he was there that day working at Walgreens. And yes, he actually had gone to the break room and seen Riley in that condition and had somehow fell in the blood. He also admitted that, yes, he was the person by the dumpsters that the manager, Crystal, had heard like in there changing or whatever with the bleach, and that he was just trying to leave. And that after it all happened, he immediately went home. And when he got home, he took off his work clothes. It was like blue pants and gray shirt and black shoes. And he took them off because they were all bloody. He also admitted that yes, he had previously had feelings for Riley. That is true, but he no longer had those feelings anymore because he had started seeing somebody new. He actually said that he was now seeing the manager, Crystal, which is weird because Crystal didn't say anything to police about them being in a relationship. So I don't know if that part's true, but this is what he said. So he admitted a bit there, but he also denied a bit. He denied stacking all of the totes or boxes in front of the video camera, even though they literally had surveillance of him doing it. He pulled a Shaggy and he was like, it wasn't me. And of course he denied killing her. And he had a wild story. He actually said that he was at the break room area because he heard Riley's screams and responded to that. And when he got to the break room area, he ran into a mystery man who was attacking Riley, which we are going to get into later. Him and the man scuffled, he slipped and fell in the blood. He was able to get away and he hurried home because he was so scared. But of course, first he stopped at the dumpsters to clean up a little bit. He said that after doing all he had done, after getting home and doing whatever he did at home, he then got in his car and started driving south because he was so afraid of what had happened. He said that he then got out of his car, left his car and started walking down the interstate, which is a choice, I guess. Police were able to recover his car. They found it, they looked into it, and they could see that it was clear that somebody had quickly tried to clean up this car. Like the floor mats were missing, but they had done a sloppy job because they also left bloody tissues in the car, bandages, and disposable razors. So Joshua was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, and he is up for life in prison, not the death penalty. I guess that Colorado actually abolished the death penalty in 2020, becoming the 22nd state to do so, which is something I didn't know before looking into this case. And the last person to be executed in Colorado was in 1994, which is, again, something I did not know. And now I know, so now you know. Now, Joshua's trial has not happened yet. Right now, it is scheduled to take place on May 8th. It was supposed to happen sooner, but basically his attorney was like, we need more time because there was new DNA evidence, because they were saying that the time frame that they had wouldn't be enough time for, whoa, that was a weird sentence. Basically, they were saying that with this new DNA evidence, they didn't have time to hire an expert to look into this in the time that they had, so that's why the trial was delayed. His attorney also tried to have the trial moved out of Colorado Springs, saying that the publicity around the case was going to make it so he couldn't get a fair trial, and presented evidence of this. Look at these news coverages. It's crazy. He's never going to get a fair trial. But the judge said that the evidence presented was not sufficient for a change of venue, and actually said that it didn't even come close. So what we've had happen so far is the preliminary hearing, which is basically a hearing that goes before a judge where the prosecution presents what they have to basically let the judge decide if there is enough evidence to even take him to trial. And during this hearing, there were a bunch of people there. There were so many people there in the courtroom, and they also had a virtual hearing for those who could not make it and wanted to watch. And during this hearing, a lot of stuff came out. The prosecution told the judge that they had witnesses, some of Riley's friends who had had conversations with Riley about Joshua and just how uncomfortable his advances made her. And that they also had a voicemail from Riley herself where she talked about this situation. The judge said that this evidence was hearsay, but also said that it could prove motive, and therefore they would allow it to be presented for the jury. We also learned during this hearing that the investigators had reviewed all of the surveillance footage, and they had determined that nobody else could have been responsible for Riley's death but Joshua. And they had done a search of his locker, and they found a lot of damning evidence in there. Creep, dude. This guy was such a creep. Is such a creep. Inside his locker, they found the sheath for a multi-tool, and they believe that this was the multi-tool used in the murder because there was a Gerber multi-tool with the knife attachment sticking out, covered in Riley's blood, found at the crime scene, and the sheath to it, that they believe was to it, was found in his locker. Also inside his locker was Riley's social security number, her name and social security number, and the name, birthday, social security number, and address of her boyfriend. They found Joshua's name tag, radio, and face mask on the floor in the storage room that was near the break room, which he didn't explain. And on top of this, the state said that Joshua had no explanation for the bloodied clothes found on his bathroom floor at home, or why he tried to shave his head after Riley was killed. They also presented video surveillance from his home that showed him coming home from Walgreens, and he was coming back in a hurried state. I guess he was really moving. He had a hoodie that was blocking his whole face, but they knew that it was him. He went inside of his house. He got some stuff like water and other supplies, and then allegedly tried to go on the run. Now, his attorney did try to say that they didn't really have a case against him, that everything that they were presenting at this preliminary hearing was circumstantial and nothing truly implicates Josh. And Josh, we're not that close. Joshua, we're not close at all. And the judge was like, yeah, I guess you're right. Like, they're not presenting physical evidence, like no DNA or fingerprints, but this isn't the type of hearing where you would present that anyway, so I don't know what you're talking about, guy. Or girl. I don't know if his attorney's a guy or a girl, I can't remember. But then Josh's attorney presented Josh's account of what happened, his story. And let me tell you, it is a story. It is a thing that one would say. Let's go through it. He said that he didn't kill Riley. He said that he was, walking around the store. He hears Riley screams. He goes to the break room. He looks in. He sees a mysterious man with these blue eyes with a gray tint. The man sees him. He sees the man stabbing Riley. Him and the man start to scuffle. He gets, those superficial cuts on his hands and on his face, but he's able to escape. He gets away. He runs home. Sure. When police are like, okay, so why didn't you call 911? He said he was scared because this mystery man knew his address somehow. Now, even though this is like a pretty implausible thing to happen, the blue-eyed man was looked into because they have to, right? And the reason that they thought maybe where he could have gotten this description from basically is that Crystal had a friend who had been at the store earlier that day that loosely fit that description, but police went and they were able to determine that he had nothing to do with it. Like, there was video surveillance of him at his own job at the time Riley was killed. So, he had nothing to do with this. During this hearing, detectives were asked their opinion if they thought that it was possible that any other person could have been responsible for Riley's death, and they were just basically simply like, no. Ultimately, the judge decided that there was enough evidence to take Joshua to trial and added that Joshua's alleged attempt to clean up after the murder was clumsy and said that the story of the blue-eyed man killing Riley was wildly implausible. Anyways, he's in jail being held without bail while he awaits trial, and the trial is expected to last 2 weeks. I guess his attorney did try to make a plea deal with the state, from what I gather, from what I read, and his attorney basically came out saying that the state is unwilling to negotiate, so they had no choice but to enter a plea of not guilty. So that's where we are with Joshua right now. We are just awaiting his trial to begin. Obviously, he's innocent until proven guilty, all that jazz, but it does seem like they have a very strong case, and man, it's just so brazen, right? To murder somebody during business hours in like a break room where you work, it's freaking crazy, dude. And while this girl is literally just trying to do her job, it is so upsetting to me. Now, speaking of her work, speaking of Walgreens, they are receiving a lot of criticism for their handling of Riley's complaints against Joshua. A local labor attorney named Ian, I'm not even going to attempt his last name because I'm going to butcher it, came forward saying that Riley was a teenage girl working with a lot of adults, so there should have been added responsibility put on the company to protect their most vulnerable people in their workplace. And he said specifically of this, quote, "Riley did everything right, and the company did not. A young woman like Riley, who's at work with somebody who is creeping her out, was making unwanted advances at her. If her employer doesn't know about this, the employer can't do anything about it. So she has an obligation under the law to report that. But once she does that, it's her employer's job. It's their requirement to keep her safe." A Walgreens spokesperson did come out saying that they're doing all they can to help, that they're cooperating with the police, and they offered their condolences to Riley's family and the community, saying, quote, "We are very saddened by this tragic event and extend our deepest condolences, thoughts, and prayers to the family and loved ones of our team member. The safety of our customers and team members is a top priority, and we are working with local authorities in their investigation. We are making counseling and other resources available to our stores and team members at this location." So that's their position. But anyways, the Walgreens, after the murder happened, was closed down for a while, and there actually ended up being like a shrine to Riley made in front of the front door, like the closed, like doors that open and close. Automated doors, you know what I'm talking about. The opening of Walgreens. Jesus, I'm dumb. A shrine was made to Riley where there was like balloons and stuffed animals and notes that said like, "We'll miss you, Riley," at all was there for her. I don't know if it's still closed. It probably isn't. It's been a while now, but it was closed for a good amount of time. There was also a vigil held for Riley at her school, like at the Air Academy, because people were just so touched by her, dude. Like, she was so sweet and so, like, she genuinely cared about people. You know what I mean? She was the type of person that listened to people and didn't just wait for her turn to speak. I don't know. There's something about her that just like really got into my heart. The Air Academy, where Riley had just finished her junior year, was also very affected by her. Like, they sent out a letter to all of the parents saying that, like, the loss of her has been so heavy on them and that they're there for support for anybody and that this is the time that they really needed to create community and lean on each other in the loss of one of their own. Her principal said that, like, the way Riley inspired people was something they wanted to carry on with them forever. They want to make sure that her eclectic music taste, her personality, and just who she was had a chance to shine on. He added, his name was Daniel, by the way, Principal Daniel added saying, quote, "She was one of those people that was just always happy, pleasant, and I never heard her say a bad word about anybody. She was just a genuinely kind person, but also quirky and funny in the very best ways." Riley's mother wants her daughter to be remembered as the inspiration she was and not just what happened to her. She actually set up a memorial fund for her daughter, like a scholarship. And basically her plan is that the first recipient of the scholarship be somebody that was going to be in Riley's graduating class. This is called the Riley Whitelaw Memorial Scholarship Fund, which you can donate to through a GoFundMe link, which I'm going to link down below. If I do not put it, please tell me so I can put it, because sometimes I forget in editing when I'm doing things, because I have a little baby and I do it at like 5 o'clock in the morning and it's a whole thing. So please let me know if I don't remember to do it so I can put it down there, because they're going to be doing good things with this, and it's in Riley's honor. And her mother said that the funds that are going to be donated are going to be for, quote, "All donations are going to be used for scholarship purposes, and perhaps one day, if the money is there, for genetic research, which is something Riley was interested in, especially DNA analysis. We believe those who apply for these scholarships should be in good standing academically, be involved in school and community activities, and have a hard work ethic. They must also demonstrate the same qualities that Riley was in her kind, empathetic nature. We will have an application process and are working to develop that." The first scholarship is planned to be awarded to students in Riley's class at Air Academy High School, and I believe that they're going to be picking people in May, like this May, and posting it on their website. And it's really sad because I believe this would have been Riley's graduating class and she's not going to be there with him, if I did that math right, which is just so sad. Man, I just feel so bad for her mom, dude. Like, this one really got to me. I think it's because, like, it's her only baby. This is her only daughter. And I feel like ever since I've become a mom, I have like a new point of reference for empathy, which I've always felt empathetic for the people that I talk to. You guys know that. I get in my feels quite a bit sometimes, but something about now having a baby and just one baby lets me feel for these people who lose their kids on a whole different level, because I do have a point of reference that I can actually look at and be like, wow, this would be horrible. And it's like, okay, it's so heartbreaking to imagine losing your kid, and not especially, but just something different about your only child. There's something about being a parent where, and especially a mother, not to shame dads, because I'm not, because dads are great. My husband's wonderful, but there's something about being a mom where you put so much of yourself into your kids, right? You lose yourself a lot in motherhood, and it's because you want to give them the best opportunity you can. You want to put as much of yourself into them as you can. So you still got to live, but you want to give yourself to them so that they can have every opportunity to have the best life that they can and have everything that they need. And then to lose that, to lose this person that you've just put your all into, that you love so much and that you created, it seems, oh, I'm going to cry. It's heartbreaking and it seems impossible to move on. But Courtney says that she goes on and she's able to move on for her daughter, that every breath she takes is for her daughter, to make her proud and to make sure that Riley is not forgotten. And with that, my friends, is the story of the tragic murder of 17-year-old Riley Whitelaw. I hope that it was informative and made sense, and that I gave you every bit of information you would want when looking into this case. And of course, I want to thank you for remembering Riley with me today. Now, considering everything I've told you during this video, I want to revisit the question of the day, and that is this. What do you think could have been done to save Riley? Like, do you think that Walgreens should be held responsible for what happened to her? What could have been done differently here? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. But anyways, guys, that is the video. Please, before you leave, don't forget to leave me a comment down below of what case you'd like to see me cover in the future. I have a long list of cases, and whenever you leave a suggestion, I put it on my list with your name next to it, so if I cover it, I can give you a shout out. I love looking into the cases that you guys suggest, because there are often cases that need more coverage or cases that I haven't heard of, and I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste, otherwise you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out a new video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. And if you want to hang out more specifically, more consistently, all my social media is listed down below, along with a link to my membership where you can get early access to non-sponsored videos, occasional live streams. That barely happens anymore, unfortunately, but there is priority comment responses. If that sounds interesting to you, it's all down below for you. And now, with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday, and I hope to see you in my next video.